There are a lot of people saying a lot of things. For example, I'll talk in a bit. I know there are people who won't like what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it. I'm not here to lie. I'm not here to lie. I'm not going to butter anyone up. So I'm going to talk. In a little while, I'll talk when the time comes. Central, let me speak. Central, let me speak, guys. I'm going to speak. Let me tell you something. I'll talk in a little while. But here, let me tell you something. They're saying that all the mess about the overturning of the sentencing calculation bill, Lula's veto. Oh, about the overturning of Lula's veto about Jorge Mesias not being approved. They're saying it was a backroom deal and that Alexandre de Moraes joined with Davi Alcolumbre, Davi and Flávio Bolsonaro together, and they teamed up, Davi Alcolumbre, Flávio Bolsonaro, and Alexandre de Moraes. The one who said that, who mentioned it, was actually Malu Gaspar, according to her sources, that they joined forces. So, for what, Andrea? Andrea? To hand Lula a defeat because it's in the interest of Bolsonaro supporters. And so Bolsonaro supporters, with this alliance together with the Centro, will hold back the investigation, in this case, the congressional inquiry into Banco Master. Because if there's an investigation and a congressional inquiry into Banco Master, it will end up implicating Davi Alcolumbre and Alexandre de Moraes. That's what they're saying. And Malu Gaspar talked about this situation. Do you believe it? Do you believe it or not? Because look, man, Flávio Bolsonaro forms alliance with Alexandre de Moraes. I don't believe it. You'll have to excuse me. But I don't believe in that alliance. Now, I don't doubt that there was an alliance between Alcolumbre and Alexandre de Moraes. At this point, I wouldn't rule anything out. Maybe there was, I don't know. But Alexandra with Flávio Bolsonaro, I don't believe it. So maybe from this possible alliance here, Alexandre de Moraes and Davi Alcolumbre, maybe Davi Alcolumbre made behind the scenes an alliance with Flávio to gain Bolsonaro supporters backing and achieve their goals. Do you understand? Do you believe it or do you not believe it? I've already told you, and I'll say it again, Alexandre de Moraes with me, he has credit. He has already put in a lot of extra hours, you know? So until proven otherwise, Alexandre de Moraes, for me, saved democracy. And he grabbed the devil by the horns and put them in jail. Those people. Do you understand? For me, he's ahead. He has credit with me. The logic is not to vouch for anyone. But with me, he has credit. What about you? Now, I don't believe in or trust Davi Alcolumbre, and I trust Flavio Rachadinho even less. Are you getting it now, my dear, my dear? Yes, so it's hard that way. Then Flavio went and gave an interview on CNN. Then they asked him, right, about this alliance. He said that there is no such alliance, that he would never make an alliance with Alexandre de Moraes, that Alexandre de Moraes was Bolsonaro's tormentor, and that he would never make an alliance with Alexandre de Moraes. That's the situation. I know one thing, my dear. When someone has something to hide, they need to hide it. And sometimes what's being hidden is so big, so big, so big that it can't be covered up alone. And she needs people there to be with her to help cover it up because it can't be kept under wraps anymore. And I don't doubt that this is the case, for example, with Davi Alcolumbre. Because Davi Alcolumbre changed all of a sudden. So Davi Alcolumbre betrayed Lula's government. In both situations, both in the matter of rejecting Lula's nominee, Jorge Mesias. Also regarding overturning the veto on the sentencing bill, the way it was. And it could be that he did this with alliances to try to cover his own back, because he could be involved in the Banco Master fraud up to his neck. That could be it. But as for Alexandre de Moraes, he gets the benefit of the doubt from me. He saved our democracy. Unless something substantial comes up about him, I won't believe it. Even less so when it comes from Malu Gaspar, from Globo. Did you catch the hint? That's right. When there's something serious, I'll be the first to show it. But for now, I don't buy that at all. No. Alexandre de Moraes has credit with me. Did you understand? Wonderful. Sweetie, but we have to stay in this almost romantic scene here. Look at what he said. Pay attention. Meanwhile, smash that like button and write, there's an alligator in this pond. Pay attention.
Look at this photo. Look at the details. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've seen a photo that speaks so loudly. Or Alcolumbre, looking fragile. Flávio Bolsonaro hugging as if saying, don't worry, we're going to protect you. This alliance between Bolsonarism and the Centro is fueled and built on shielding. Shielding against investigations. Bolsonarism didn't want an investigation into Master. Zeytel, Vocario's brother-in-law, gave $3 million to Bolsonaro, gave $2 million to Tachiso. It was just empty talk. They talked about a parliamentary inquiry, but yesterday in that shameful session, they were together, hugging each other. The phrase, setting up a parliamentary inquiry, never came up. Actually, we did say it. Gleis demanded it from President Alcolumbre. And what will be Alcolumbre's concern? Alcolumbre's? Here's Valdemar da Costa Neto.
They want to vote on sentencing guidelines as long as there isn't a parliamentary inquiry into Master Bank in the Senate.
Who is Alcolumbre?
Alcolumbre, he's one of them.
But doesn't he want the parliamentary inquiry into Master Bank?
Of course not. Of course not.
Why? Because it affects him.
It doesn't affect half the world.
We want everything to show up. The relationship between Master and BRB, with Ibanez, with the pension fund in Rio de Janeiro, with Claudio Castro, with the pension fund in Amapá as well, Lula's federal police, won't stop the investigations. And we, folks, we have to go back to doing what we did last year. Every time they got together, Bolsonarism and Centrão, we turned the game around. That's how it was with the OF. We called them out that they were doing that because they didn't want to tax the BBBs, banks, billionaires, and beds. Yes, they are united around the beds. Then they made the immunity amendment. They said we defeated the government. We turned the game around in the streets. Now it's the same thing. We have to show that this Congress is uniting around an agenda against the people. That's why it's called the Enemy of the People Congress. Because they are against workers' rights, they're against taxing the richest, and they want protection. Protection for crimes, protection for lawmakers, and protection for coup plotters.
Yeah, it's really strange. Just imagine if there are alligators in this pond. Imagine in the little pond, there are frogs, toads, and piranhas. There's everything. And I know one thing, Brasília is like this. Brasília is shaking, my dear, my friend. Brasília is shaking because there are a lot of people who are involved in this thing called Master, a lot of people involved in this thing called INSS, and they might even block a parliamentary inquiry. They might even block a parliamentary inquiry, but the federal police won't be blocked. The federal police under Lula's government have the freedom to investigate and catch the real criminals. And maybe that's why Davi Alcolumbre's betrayal happened. Because Davi Alcolumbre knows that. And he needs to protect himself somehow. And who is he going to go after? It's the pot calling the kettle black, you know? He's going to go after the far-right crowd and the central crowd to try to shield himself. That's the situation. Do you understand? But let's see what happens, right? Let's see. Because meanwhile, Flávio Bolsonaro is doing early campaigning and all that. He was there at Silas Malafaya's church. I already discussed this on the 8:30 live stream. In fact, I told you, don't get nervous, don't worry, because today I'm the one who's going to be nervous. You saw that things got heated on the 8:30 live stream. Silas Malafaya was there turning the pulpit for worshiping Jesus into a real fifth-rate political soapbox. Worse than a bar, a low-class bar? The people were there. I showed that. And now it happened at the Agri show there in Mato Grosso too. Where was it? In Mato Grosso and now in Sao Paulo. All funded with public money from Tarcisio's government in this case. And you can't do that. You can't. Public money being used to give a pre-candidate a political platform. What's happening? Zaratin is already taking legal action because of this situation here. Look. Tarcisio becomes the target of a lawsuit for early election campaigning. The complaint points out early campaigning and the use of public resources at a Sao Paulo government event at the Agri show. The same thing also occurred in Mato Grosso. Mato Grosso also had the agro event there, which was the same mess and everything was paid for with public money. Then soon they're ineligible or whatever, abuse of economic power, abuse of political power, and then they think it's unfair. Then they think this whole mess is fine. Shall we listen to Zaratin speaking here? He mentioned this situation here. Look, let's listen to what he says here. Pay attention.
Tarcisio is shameless. He used public resources to carry out early campaigning for Flávio Bolsonaro. Look at this. They used the facilities of the São Paulo state government at the Agri Show Fair in Ribeirão Preto to launch Flávio Bolsonaro's candidacy. A real absurdity. He even presented Flávio Bolsonaro as the country's next president. And all of this was broadcast. It was transmitted on the official channel of the São Paulo state government. Because of this, I am filing a complaint against Tarcísio de Freitas and Flávio Bolsonaro at the office of the Prosecutor General so that they can open a case to charge these two with early campaigning, that they be fined for doing what they shouldn't be doing. It's absurd.
Yeah, these people are all crazy, desperate, right? And now they're upset when Lula speaks through official channels. But is Lula the president of the republic? And is Lula talking about what he's actually doing? Does Lula actually need to speak up now? Excuse me? What are you talking about, man? For example, Lula just talked about the new Desenrola program. A new program for people who are in debt, for those who earn up to 5 minimum wages. Minimum wages, your debt could be reduced by as much as 90%, anywhere from 30 to 90%, right? And you'll be able to take up to 20% of your FGTS. You don't get it directly. A bank accepts it and Keisha transfers your FGTS to another bank to pay off part of your debt. Your debt can be paid. You can even split it into up to 48 installments with just a little bit of interest. Then Lula comes and says, well, he has to speak. He is the president, right? That doesn't mean it's his propaganda. No, it means he's working. While some have to do early campaigning, playing politics, using public money that doesn't get paid back. They can't. Lula works and shows what he's doing. If he wasn't showing what he's doing, fine, but he is showing what he's doing. So it's totally different from you all, because what are you doing? Doing things you shouldn't have done, using public money and public TV. These are completely opposite things. Shall we see what Lula said? He said just a little bit at this event here. Look, the new Desenrola program will help you pay your debts. You who are in debt and earn up to 5 minimum wages.
And it's extraordinary that the guy wants to buy something for his house, that he wants to fix up his house, that he wants to change his car, wants to buy a new suit, wants to buy a toy for his child, wants to buy. It's wonderful that we want to buy something, but it's just important that we draw attention so that people take on debt and don't lose sight of their ability to pay. And what we're trying to address here, as we've done before, is that Brazil has gone through unusual times. This country has been getting into debt for a long time, and COVID made society go into debt out of necessity. And there are a lot of people who since that time are still, struggling, small business owners, bar owners, restaurant owners. People are. So we're trying to find a way to take the pressure off these people. so they can breathe normally again, so they can dream again, to have their name cleared, because it's not right. A Brazilian citizen, having their name blacklisted in Serasa because of a debt of 100 reais, 150 reais, 200 reais, it doesn't make sense. Then the market turns this citizen. He gets pushed into the underground economy because he can't buy anything anymore, credit. He can't have a bank account anymore. In other words, he becomes a customer of the criminals, of the loan sharks. And when he falls into the hands of the loan sharks, that's when he'll really be suffocated for the rest of his life, systematically threatened, paying even more extortionate interest than the ones you talk about every day. The Brazilian interest rate is extortionate. He pays and there's no limit. So what we're doing is telling the Brazilian people, look, we're going to make it so you can breathe again. We're going to create the conditions for you to reduce your debt so you can pay off debts that you've owed for a long time and haven't been able to pay. So you can free yourselves a bit from credit card debt and overdraft debt. And we're telling people, look, we're going to do all this. There will be a guarantee fund, but now you can't keep gambling. You can't. That's why we're prohibiting people from spending a little of their money on gambling for a year. I think you in the press could help us monitor and see if a program like this will work. Because everything we announce here takes time. It takes time. The banks will have one problem. Another bank will have another problem. In other words, it's important for us to be patient, because in some banks it will start working tomorrow. In other banks it will start next week. What's important is that we keep track, that you can notify, report, publish articles so that we can keep improving. And turn this new Desenrola into an example of credit policy, which will not allow Brazilian society to be suffocated when trying to buy basic things. No one is buying dollars, no one is buying luxury cars. People are buying simple things, sometimes even just to eat. People are getting into debt, so people start losing track of their debt. And I know a lot of people like that, a lot of people. The guy spends a little here, 40, another there, 50, then another 100. In the end, all these little debts turn into one big debt, when it's time to pay. And then people start to panic. So what we're saying is, look, we understand your debt. This applies to small and medium business owners. It applies to MEI. It applies to small entrepreneurs. And from now on, we want you and the government together to take care of this debt with a lot of care, so that you can keep consuming, so that you can keep buying whatever you want. But you also need to be aware that debt should be taken on within your means. If that happens, everyone will be able to buy more, businesses will sell, companies will produce, people will be happier and without any debt to pay, then everything will be better in this country.
That's right. And we can't forget, can we? I'll never forget. 2022 election year. Do you remember? Bolsonaro was the president of the republic, right? And Bolsonaro needed to please the poorest people, right? Bolsonaro needed to please people on low-ass benefits, the retirees, the pensioners. So what did Bolsonaro do? He made payroll-deducted loans available. Loans, paperwork, all those people. Do you remember? Even people who were going to receive Bolsa Familia could take out a loan. Those receiving LOAS, a minimum wage earner, could commit a large part of their minimum wage, retirees, pensioners. He raised the limit on payroll-deducted loans, where people started receiving just a pittance, a tiny bit of their retirement, of their benefit, and so on and so forth. And they ended up with debts as far as the eye could see, which brought that feeling, right, of happiness, like, oh, I have money in the bank, but then they forgot they'd have months to pay it back. So Bolsonaro did all of this. This situation, by the way, benefited the INSS fraud, benefited Banco Master, and benefited Zima's finance company. Many, in fact, made improper deductions from people who didn't take out loans and had loans put in their names. My own mother didn't take out a loan and had improper deductions because of her benefit, her retirement. So everyone ended up deeply in debt, especially for the most vulnerable people. To sweeten things up, to make people happy, to vote for Bolsonaro, and now the time has come to pay the debt.
And there's nowhere to get it from.
That's the situation. So Lula has already launched Desenrola 1, and now there's a new Desenrola. Let's take a quick look here to see how it's going to be. Here, look, the interest rates for the renegotiation program will be 1.99% per month, and the discounts can range from 30% to 90% of the amount owed. That way, you'll have a much smaller installment and more time to pay off the debt. The use of the severance fund will also be possible for you to pay off your debts, which has also been confirmed, and you'll be able to withdraw up to 20% of what's in your severance fund. You won't get it directly. You'll authorize the transfer of up to 20% to the bank or the financial institution where your debt is, and then it goes straight to them. You understand? So there's no risk of you taking the money, spending it, and ending up in more debt. There's also this possibility here, but you know how it is, right? Online betting is also a problem nowadays. There are a lot of people who are addicted to online gambling, thinking they're going to get rich, thinking they're going to win, but they just end up poorer and even more in debt. To start playing, these people are so shameless that you don't even need to have money to start gambling. They give you credit so you can start gambling, so you get addicted. Sometimes they even let you win at first. Wow, I won. Then you do everything you can to get money or a credit card and put it in to play more. Then you get screwed. You lose everything you have. Like my grandma used to say, child, don't lose your way home, child. That's right. There are a lot of broke people who are addicted to gambling and are even losing their way home. With so much debt piling up, let me tell you something. The machine was made to win. You're playing against a computer that knows how your mind works, and they're going to set traps for you, and they will catch you. Some people are dying by suicide because of this. There are people who are losing their homes, their cars, they're losing everything. Because of this crap, sorry for the language, because of this crappy online game. You're gonna play this, let me be silly. Oh, Andre, I won. Soon you'll lose even your pants, even your underwear, you know? Oh my God, oh Jesus. Go play soccer in the street. Go play badminton, you know? Go do something that gets your body moving and gets some oxygen to your brain so you can think better, you know? Oh Jesus. Meanwhile, it came out that Flávio Bolsonaro is going to appoint, if he wins the presidency, he's going to appoint his brothers as ministers. Oh my God, oh Jesus. Look here, Flávio Bolsonaro denies that he would appoint his brothers as ministers and sparks a new crisis. Senator Flávio Bolsonaro's campaign released a statement to the press to deny rumors circulating among supporters and on social media about the possible appointment of his brothers. Federal Deputy Eduardo Bolsonaro, the former deputy, right guys, he's not a deputy anymore. And former Councilman Carlos Bolsonaro as a minister in a possible government. This situation came up saying that he had said in a meeting that he would appoint his family to the positions. Principais. Now he came and said no, that this isn't true, that he won't appoint them. Do you think he will appoint them or not? What do you think? Me, I think it's Lula for the fourth time. And I think he won't appoint because it's Lula Tetra. Because it's not possible that a pain in the neck. Did you see that people have a bad credit? Yeah, when you talk about dirt, we already know who to look at. It's the money skimming. It's the little militia. It's not possible that a scoundrel like that could win the presidency of Brazil. If he wins in Brazil, you can stop because I'm getting off. Stop the world. I want to get off. It's not possible. Meanwhile, Congress overturns Lula's veto, changes the sentencing, and benefits Bolsonaro. Someone came here to the channel in the comments and I have to clarify. I'm here for that. That's why your comment is very important. We go through the comments with a fine-tooth comb. We see this and that. And from your comments, we develop the whole topic. People came to ask me, I think about 5, right, Central? About 5, 6, 7 people. I don't know exactly how many, several people about this right here. They asked me the following, Andrea. I saw people saying that the National Congress couldn't overturn Lula's veto of the sentencing bill the way Alcolumbre did, which was a partial veto, which was a partial override of Lula's full veto, partial. Andrea, can they or can't they? They told me, I heard people saying that it's not allowed, that Congress couldn't overturn Lula's veto, which is a full veto, that they couldn't partially overturn Lula's veto. How does that work, Andrea Goncalves? Is it true or false? It's false. Excuse me? I'm not here to lie, my dear. That's a lie. The National Congress can override Lula's veto. In fact, it can do so only in part. Yes, it can. It can override Lula's veto, which applies to the entire law in full, or it can override the veto only partially. There is no prohibition against that. It can override it. Let me tell you something. I know it's sometimes distressing, but try to understand the situation. Could the National Congress have approved the dosimetry bill? Yes, it could. The National Congress has legislative authority, and it could have set lighter sentences. Could it, Andre? Yes, it could. And it could, so much so that they actually did it. And Lula went there and vetoed it, and Lula has that power. Lula can take a law and veto it. He can veto it entirely, or he can veto it partially. He can veto just an article, just a section, just a paragraph, just a chapter. He can also veto only partially or entirely. He has this power, and in return, the National Congress has the power to overturn the president's veto. This is in the federal constitution. They can overturn the veto entirely or partially, as they did. Do you understand? Yes, they can. Just as they can do all of this, whether it's the parliamentarians or Lula, the president of the republic, the federal Supreme Court can also do it and will analyze whether this overturning, and with the restoration of the law that establishes the reduction of sentences, whether this law is constitutional or not, the Supreme Court can do that too. And it will carry out this analysis because PSOL, REDE, and even PT have already said they will take the matter to the federal Supreme Court. Once the federal Supreme Court is called upon, it will make a decision whether the sentencing calculation bill is valid or not. And it's important for you to understand that the federal Supreme Court, it can, what is this here, guys? So many scary things show up here. Have mercy. I rebuke it in the name of Jesus. And the federal Supreme Court can completely overturn a law, just as the Supreme Court can overturn an article, a clause, or a paragraph. Or the Supreme Court may not overturn anything and can even give a new interpretation to the text without reducing or changing the wording. Each one has its own power. And each one will exercise it within its authority and the guidelines set forth by the federal constitution. Now, one issue that I think might happen is the Supreme Court giving a different interpretation regarding the extent of the sentencing calculation. I think the Supreme Court could do that. What is that? The Supreme Court could decide, for example, that the reduction of the sentence will only happen for those who acted caught up in the crowd under mob mentality. Those who didn't have much time to think or reason about the situation, they may have their sentences reduced and the sentencing calculation will apply. But for those others, the ringleaders who did everything coldly and calculatedly, who had time to act and to reconsider, who are the coup leaders, like, for example, the crucial group of Bolsonaro, Braga Neto, and so on, to understand that the sentencing calculation is not applicable. Because a reduction of the sentence is not applicable. Can the Supreme Court interpret it that way, Andre? Yes, it can. If I were on the federal Supreme Court, for example, I would do that. I wouldn't take away the sentencing calculation for the people who acted under mob mentality, because scientifically, in fact, people do behave differently under mob mentality. I would keep the sentencing calculation for them, but for those who acted in a calculated, cold way, the crucial groups in which Bolsonaro, for example, is included, I would not accept a reduction of the sentence as constitutional. That's one of the possible outcomes, I think. Now, there is a procedural debate that will also be raised. What debate is that, Andre? This is very interesting because this is where Lindy B comes in, the law of introduction to the Brazilian legal norms. I've explained this in other live streams. It's the law of laws in Brazil. It's the norm of norms. It's the Lindy B. It's a short law, but packed with legal substance and a gigantic theoretical framework. Everyone who wants to understand a bit of law needs to study this law. This law is below the Pact of San Jose, Costa Rica. There's the Constitution, the Pact of San Jose, Costa Rica, then comes the LINBI, and after that, the other laws. What happened, Andre? Andre, there was a conflict of laws over time. What happened? In December of last year, it was approved, the law sentencing. The sentencing law was approved. And what did the sentencing law establish? It established a reduction in the time required to move to a less restrictive prison regime. What does that mean, Andre? It means the criminal gets to go home earlier. He will move to a less strict regime sooner. Do you understand? He will serve a certain amount of time in prison. If he's in a closed regime, he'll move to a semi-open regime more quickly. If he's in semi-open, he'll move to the open system more quickly. That's what the sentencing law establishes, a reduction in prison time for criminals. All criminals, Andrea? Pretty much all of them. It's not just the January 8th crowd. That was established. It was approved in December of last year. Then a new law came in in February. In February, the federal government's anti-crime package was approved. What did this law establish? Harsher sentences and a much stricter sentence progression system. Much stricter than what the sentencing guidelines law establishes. So what does the LINBI say? The law on Brazilian legal norms, it says that the newer law repeals the previous one. That is not compatible with it. The newer law repeals it and takes effect, which is what? Stricter regime progression. But there's a catch. Lula vetoed this one. So this one didn't go into effect. Lula vetoed it. So this one is in effect. And this one that Lula vetoed, since it's not in effect yet, it was pushed forward ahead of this one. And since the Senate, the National Congress, overturned Lula's veto, it goes into effect. And it becomes the newest law because it will be promulgated now. After the veto is overturned. If it is the newest law, that previous law, that then would benefit thousands and thousands of criminals, including murderers, killers, robbers who kill, drug traffickers, rapists, and femicide perpetrators. So what did Davi Alcolumbre do here when the veto was being considered? And he simply declared this part moot and said that it would continue regarding the other part. This will be the subject of debate in the Federal Supreme Court. The analysis is as follows. Can the National Congress do this? What is the limit for the National Congress to carry out this kind of analysis? Which a priori would be an analysis by the Supreme Court. This is a part that we call formal procedural law, which will also be analyzed within the scope of this direct action of unconstitutionality. PT will file, PSOL says it will file, and REDE will file. The prosecutor general might also file one with a direct action of unconstitutionality, where the Supreme Court will be able to analyze both the substantive issue and the subject matter itself. That was my first explanation. Even perhaps for violating the principle of impersonality, making a law with a subjective character when laws should have an objective character, making a law with an abstract character when the law should be concrete. There's that part. And the law also has the formal procedural part which will come into play. The law of introduction to the norms of Brazilian law. So this will be a big debate. As long as this is still pending, this is going to happen. It may be that all the sentence reductions after the law is enacted will be suspended, especially because they're not automatic when this law is enacted. Because Davi Alcolumbre should promulgate it. Why, Andrea? Because since Lula vetoed it, the one who should promulgate it is the president of the National Congress, Davi Alcolumbre. Once it's promulgated, it's published in the Federal Official Gazette. It's a law that is valid, but that doesn't mean that the coup plotters, that the people who were convicted, whether they're in prison or not, will have their sentences reduced. It's not like that. It's not automatic. Each of these people who were convicted or who are facing trial anyway will have to file for it with a lawsuit requesting a reduction of their sentence. Understand, after the law is promulgated and published, but there's a catch. This constitutional challenge, while it's being processed, soon it will begin moving through the courts. It can halt, it can suspend all the reviews of requests for sentence reduction. Is that right, Andre? Yes. And I've already seen a constitutional challenge last for 20 years. What am I trying to tell you? It's in the hands of the Supreme Court. This situation, what I've told you from the beginning, it's in the hands of the Federal Supreme Court, because the one who will review the request for sentence reductions after this law is enacted, guess who it is? Alexandre de Moraes. And by filing this direct action of unconstitutionality against this law, its processing can suspend all requests to implement sentence reductions until the final analysis, which can take years. Summary, everything is in the hands of the Federal Supreme Court. And let's see what happens. What do you think? How will it turn out? What do you think?
O que eu acho?
I doubt Alexandre de Moraes will put up with this. What is the consequence, Andrea? I'll repeat, he has to review all the requests for sentence reduction from the moment it's enacted. And he already has some in his drawer. He must have some. 4,000 cases. And as soon as this direct action of unconstitutionality was filed to analyze whether the sentencing law is constitutional or not, this analysis can suspend all requests for sentence reduction, to halt, to suspend until the final decision, which can take years. So everything will depend on what? On the Supreme Court's political will to make it happen or to show it, whether on substantive grounds or on procedural grounds. They have everything in their hands. I'm not even discussing judicial activism here. I'm talking about procedure. And I'm not even talking about activism. Oh, activism, no. Without making a decision on the merits of the situation, whether the sentencing law applies or not. Oh, and I'll repeat it for you. The National Congress could have overturned Lula's veto, whether partially or fully. That's not the issue. The point is, it's a debate I love, in depth, using the law of introduction to the rules of Brazilian law, which is the LINB, which deals with conflicts of norms in time and space. There's a lot to talk about, to debate, to disagree on, to contradict, and all hell's going to break loose. I just sincerely hope that it's an in-person session, because I want to watch from the front row eating popcorn. I love it. I love it. I really do. Seriously. When I say I love it, I really mean it. So put it down, okay? No amnesty, no sentence reductions. There won't be any. Andrea, are you crazy, Andrea? Huh? What? Did you approve the law, Andrea? Huh? There's no rush. A lot can still happen. Until then, he already served his sentence. Get the code, my dear, my dear. Until then, you're already screwed on credit, debit, and PIX. Andrea, and speaking of that, what about Jorge Messias and Lula? Is he going to nominate someone new to the Supreme Court or not? He will. Do you think this has opened the door now for a woman and a black woman? What do you think? I think so. I think the right door has opened now for real. I won't go into details since I explained it on Friday's live stream. What my position was and my thoughts about all of this? Of course, I could be wrong, obviously, because I'm not Jesus. Only Jesus is perfect. But I think it opened a very interesting door now. For a woman, a black woman. Yeah, right? Yeah. Really, really. There are people mentioning Simone Tebet. I can't believe that. Simone Tebet, she's in the polls, leading the polls for the Senate in Sao Paulo. You can't waste that kind of political capital, you know? You just can't. Let Simone run for the Senate. She'll win in Sao Paulo. She'll do a good job. And are we going to appoint a black woman to the Supreme Federal Court? I don't think the Senate would have the guts or the courage. G? It says approve and reject a woman, black, for the Supreme Federal Court position, where we have only one woman today, who, by the way, in the next term will turn 75 years old, will go into mandatory retirement, and we won't have any more. No. As I said, some bad things can work out for the best. And I'm sure that Lula will know how to use the right approach, since, in my opinion, this is the right time. Get the code, my dear, and let's keep moving forward because there are others waiting. They're already discarding it. Look, they're already discarding it. Traitor Flávio Bolsonaro wants to abandon Claudio Castro to run his mother. Flávio Bolsonaro is intensifying his political moves to run his mother, Rogeria Bolsonaro, for the Senate in the 2026 elections in a move that aims to push Claudio Castro out of the race. Jesus, these people say they're anti-establishment. The father is in politics. The stepmother, Misheka, is going into politics too. The brothers, all in politics. The girl didn't get in, the youngest daughter, because she's not old enough yet. And now they're even going to put the mother in. Bolsonaro's ex-wife. Bolsonaro, a self-proclaimed conservative, has had 3 wives, each younger than the last. Oh, what a so-called conservative man. He's not conservative at all. Now he's bringing in the mother too. I'm anti-establishment. Anti-establishment, but you'd have to be pretty dumb to believe people like that, you know? Of course he's doing this here, guys. I've already told you. Claudio Castro is ineligible and has been removed from office. How does he expect to run? Can we be realistic? He can run while his case is still pending, Andre. He can even run while his case is still pending because he still has an appeal in the federal Supreme Court. But after a decision from the Superior Court, the measure is already enforced. He has already been removed from office and is ineligible. If he runs while his case is still pending, the PL party will lose the seat in the Senate. Is he going to risk losing the Senate seat because of a troublemaker? Then, of course, they'll put in another one of those freeloaders' mom. The family is anti-establishment. Everyone's inside the system, milking it for all it's worth, and they say they're anti-establishment. Jesus. Who believes that, for God's sake? It's always some crazy stunt. Meanwhile, another one ended up in jail. It's right here, look. Moraes orders the federal police to arrest businessman convicted for blocking highways. The order was issued after the conviction became final, when no further appeals are possible, as determined by Moraes. Now Erger must be arrested and sent to a prison facility to serve his sentence, initially under a semi-open regime. Why semi-open, Andre? Because he got less than 8 years in prison. Up to 8 years in prison, make it a big sentence. Make it a big sentence because a short one isn't enough. Up to 8 years in prison, you go to the semi-open prison regime. Over 8 years means going into the closed prison regime, but they've already caught the businessman. He kept supporting over there, see? He puts a truck there at the roadblocks. That's right. From the coup plot in 2022, now it's been finalized. There's no more appeal. Now he'll have to serve his sentence. And that's one more going to jail. There are a lot of people, business people, those folks who are among the last ones now to be convicted, you know? So they're receiving their sentences, especially since the appeal period has expired. Once the appeal period has expired, the decision becomes final and the conviction must be enforced in this case. Okay? What does that mean? Jail, prison, and several other situations. And she was removed. Not a single one was spared. Look, Sylvia Yao Yupi, a Bolsonarist congresswoman, was removed from office and declared ineligible. Why, Andre? She wanted to look better, right? And she used public money for facial harmonization. Oh my goodness, really, Andre? Yes, and the courts found out. Sylvia Yao Yupi, a hardcore Bolsonarist, always tough, military and all that. Well, she was removed from office and declared ineligible because she used public money for facial harmonization. And the harmonization didn't help much, did it, guys? Oh my goodness, another one who was removed from office here, another Bolsonarist. Brazil's Superior Electoral Court removes the Bolsonarist governor of Roraima and makes it final. Denario is ineligible for abusing power in the 2022 elections. Another one who more or less bought votes, electoral process and all that, and got screwed. Also a Bolsonarist. You can't save any, not on credit, debit, or even PIX, right? And another one who's also screwed on credit and debit. Trump's disapproval hits a new record and reaches 62% in the United States. According to the survey, 62% of Americans disapprove of the way Trump is handling the job. It's the highest rate ever recorded over both terms. And it also increased the American people's awareness that Donald Tranquera isn't quite right in the head, no. And that maybe the application of the 25th Amendment, which is the suspension of the term and removal of the president to undergo medical treatment because he's not acting very normal, no. This feeling also increased, as well as the number of people who believe that Donald Tranquera needs to be removed because he's not quite right in the head, no. What do you think? Me? I don't just think that. I'm sure he's not quite right in the head, no. Yeah, actually, Lula should be careful with that guy, you know? Lula, be careful because that man is trouble, trouble, trouble. And we can't forget that Hugo Mota scheduled sessions for this whole week, special sessions in the committee there to analyze the merits. The proposed constitutional amendment ending the 6 days on, 1 day off work schedule, he scheduled it there so debates could happen soon, allowing for amendments like the riders, explosive amendments, and employer subsidies to determine what stays or goes before sending it to the plenary for a vote and approval. Why? Because Lula lit a fire under the process to get it moving now because it has to move forward because Lula submitted a bill under urgent status. If this one doesn't move forward, the one from Hugo Mota, which isn't really from Hugo Mota, obviously it's from the Workers' Party. One is from Erica Hilton, which is from PSOL, and the other is from Reginaldo Lopez. If this one doesn't move forward, Lula's will have to move forward. What does Lula's proposal establish? No transition rule. If it's approved, it applies immediately. For every 5 days you work, you'll get 2 days off. It doesn't end any type of shift schedule. Everything will be adjusted according to the 40-hour work week. 12 by 36. Yes, 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 yes. Everything will have to fit into the 40-hour work week, which is part of this Lula's project. For every 5 days work, 2 days off. Erica Hilton's proposal is 36 hours, the 4x3 shift schedule that she put there with the 360-day transition rule. And there's one from Reginaldo Lopez. He put in a transition rule that to me is huge. It doesn't even make sense. I'm sorry, but 10 years of a transition rule, what is that? 10 years to be fully implemented. A 36-hour work schedule as well, divided over 5 days a week. For every 5 days of work, 2 days off. That's the situation. Let's see what gets added, included, or removed. And this committee is the most important one because there are a lot of people like Bolsonaro and others who will try to add unrelated amendments to prevent it from being enforced of the proposal. And consequently, it's real implementation because they defend the elite. But when seeking votes, they turn to the people and workers who make up most of Brazil's population. But when voting, they side with the elite. And we have to keep an eye on that. And I will, obviously. And this whole situation is going to keep unfolding all week. And we already have to remember the Bolsa Master, right? Which is boss welfare. Bolsa Master is one thing. It's boss welfare. The boss grant that Nicolas Ferreira said he will introduce an amendment for, where the government must pay a grant to the boss. The guy didn't have the courage to vote in favor of a 100 real cooking gas benefit for the poorest, for the workers. But now he wants the government to pay boss welfare to the elite, to the rich. Oh, give me a break, people. Come on, give me a break, right? Oh, Nicholas, get out of here with this boss welfare scheme of yours. Put it up there, people. Get out, Nicholas, get out. Bolsa Master is enough already. Bolsa Master, right? Now there's also Nicholas's boss welfare scheme. Oh, give me a break. Smash that like button, like, comment, and share, my beautiful people. Let's go for it. And don't forget, there are alligators in this pond. Just imagine that little pond. There are giant otters, piranhas, frogs, guararap, jararaca snakes, and tree frogs. There's everything. Then I remember Bolsa Master and Bolsa Patrão and Daniel Alvarcar's private jet, 10 trips. Smash the like button, like, and comment.